Good day, Suidlanders, and welcome to Suidlanders Week in Review for Friday, the 4th of October. In fact, due to circumstances beyond my control, I'm recording this video on Sunday, the 6th of October, and it's probably just as well. It's probably fortuitous, given that we wouldn't have been able to cover the full extent of these severe events that are reigning over the world at the moment on Friday, and it's probably best that you go into the new week when this video is published tomorrow, Monday, with more rather than less knowledge of the rapid acceleration of crisis in the world. Before we do an in-depth report on those horrifying events, let's briefly mention a few other noteworthy occurrences of the past now 9 days. The gold price continues to occupy territory around $2,650, just a little lower than the all-time historical record set 9 or 10 days ago. Events in the Middle East have finally begun to frighten oil traders, and experts are now talking darkly about possible spikes in the oil price, a subject that is, of course, near and dear to all of our hearts. The conflict in Ukraine has recently begun to deteriorate, and at an accelerating rate for Ukraine. Lines of defense are collapsing daily, shortages of ammunition are being recorded continuously, and there are now persistent rumors that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has lost all popular support and that coups d'etat, multiple, are being plotted against him. Experts are now talking about the war possibly ending before the end of the year. That is probably not accurate, but that does reflect the rate at which matters are deteriorating in Ukraine as Russia steamrollers on all fronts. It has come to light that since the end of 2017, China has dumped a net $440 billion worth of United States Treasury notes and bonds. Between the 26th and the 29th of September, Hurricane Helene ravaged parts of 12 US states, killing, at last count, 239 people, with up to 1,400 still missing. However, it should be noted that the anecdotal reports from the ground suggest that the official figures are vastly understated, and even Elon Musk has resorted to strongly implying that the authorities are not being truthful about the severity of the hurricane. In fact, he is alleging, as others are, that the authorities are deliberately not providing adequate assistance, and that they are actively, physically preventing assistance being rendered by any other entities or people. Last but certainly not least for this report, the past week of the Hezbollah-Israel conflict has been more horrific even than the previous week, if that is possible. Let me begin by providing you with some background on the parties involved and the various conflicts. When Israel was granted statehood in 1948, and Jews began a large and sudden influx into Israel, and much land was taken from the previous occupants, it led to a cascade of now 75, 76 years of tension between the previous occupants and various Israeli neighbors. The 67 war, the 73 war we all know about, the invasion of Lebanon in 1982, the war in Lebanon in 2006, endless car bombings, endless this, endless that. And they fundamentally involve 3 or 4 salient parties representing the Palestinians generally, such as the Palestinian Liberation Organization, those parties defending Lebanon, the party Hamas that we know that represents the Gaza Strip in the far southwest of Israel, Lebanese entity principally being Hezbollah, which was founded in 1982 in order to get Israel out of Lebanon. That was its sole purpose. Israel had invaded to pursue the Palestinian Liberation Organization after it was kicked out of Jordan by King Hussein after its involvement in the attempted coup d'etat of his kingship. It's a very confusing, complicated quagmire of many different parties and a long and twisted history. Let it suffice to say that on the 7th of October last year, Hamas invaded Israel. And there are many, many questions about that. Nobody can make sense of the fact that the Israeli army was stood down for 7 full hours. Nobody can make sense of the fact that Israel's very, very elaborate system of sensors for observing people illegally crossing the border failed to alert anybody. Nobody can make sense of the fact that these Hamas guys were apparently training on paragliders up and down for months in advance, and nobody noticed. It was a very curious event, and it became curiouser when, as the Jerusalem Post recently wrote, the Israeli forces killed more than 50% of the Israelis who were killed on that day. Nevertheless, Israel then mounted a massive campaign against Hamas in Gaza, and we've all observed that. Subsequently, Hezbollah in Lebanon, a Shiite organization, in other words, people who believe in the Shiite Ali, Friends of Ali strain of Islam, began to warn that if Israel continued to beat up their brothers in Gaza, they would take steps against Israel. And we've all observed that transpire over time. Let me just mention now that the Hezbollah are supported principally by Iran. Iran is that state in the world that is the home of Shia Islam. The Islam of Shiat Ali, the Friends of Ali, one of the early figures of Islam. In recent days, things have spiraled out of control very rapidly and possibly now uncontrollably. Roughly speaking, the acceleration in the escalation between Israel, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and Iran began on the 16th of September, when Israel's Security Cabinet approved a new war aim that was couched in disguising language. It was clearly intentionally meant to mislead. But in simple English, it amounted to going to war in southern Lebanon against Hezbollah, launching a ground invasion against Hezbollah. Then on the 17th of September, 12 Lebanese were killed and over 2,750 were wounded when their pager devices exploded. No matter whose side you may be on, no matter how you want to look at this event, I'm stipulating actual occurrences that led to the rapid escalation of this conflict. On the 18th of September, 30 Lebanese were killed and over 750 wounded when various wireless devices, various descriptions, blew up. Subsequently, there were many and various strikes by both parties. Air strikes, rocket strikes, artillery strikes, you name it. The majority of them, the overwhelming majority, were perpetrated by Israel. And it's important to mention that. And you can look it up yourself. It's important to mention it not from the point of view of where our sympathies might lie, but rather to understand as well as possible who might feel that they need to do what to whom next. You punched me twice, I punch you twice, then I think, well, let me give him another one for good measure because he was too ahead of me and all I did was catch. There have also been various assassinations of all sorts of personalities in Hezbollah. On the 23rd of September, Israel conducted over 1,600 strikes in one day in Lebanon, and Hezbollah fired about 240 rockets into northern Israel, into residential areas. Not only residential areas, but it's important to mention that the rockets were fired or aimed indiscriminately. On the 25th of September, 40,000 Iraqi, Syrian, and Yemeni Houthi militants formed an army around the Golan Heights. The Golan Heights is high ground that overlooks the Sea of Galilee, that belongs to Syria, technically, but which Israel occupied and didn't give back, I should say, after the Yom Kippur War of 1973, I believe. So just around the heights, an army of 40,000 gathers in anticipation of an Israeli invasion. All sources acknowledge that it was not an invasive army. It had no intentions of invading Israel. It formed as a defensive army, or militia, if you like. On Friday, the 27th of September, matters escalated beyond remedy when Israel used at least 64, but perhaps as many as 83 US-made half metric ton, that is to say 1,000 pound bunker buster bombs dropped by F-15 jets to assassinate Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah during a meeting in a basement beneath 4 buildings forming a city block in Beirut. I should point out to you that Alistair Crook, the very highly regarded conservative former British MI6 spy, insists that the correct number is 86 and that they were not 1,000 pound bunker buster bombs, but that they were 2,000 pound, roughly 1,000 kilogram bunker buster bombs. On Monday, the 30th of September, it emerged that Israel was about to launch a ground invasion of southern Lebanon. On Tuesday, the 1st of October, Israeli troops officially invaded in what is known as Operation Northern Arrows. Hours later, Iran launched at least 181 ballistic missiles at Israel, largely defeating Israel's famous Arrow, Iron Dome, David Sling, and even Patriot air defense or anti-missile batteries. Israel then imposed a complete media blackout with heavy penalties on all Israeli citizens concerning that strike. Nobody is allowed to talk about it. Social media, newspapers, TV, radio, at all. And it is believed that the reason is because as many as 500 ballistic missiles were fired by Iran upon Israel, largely successfully, and that Israel doesn't wish the world, particularly the Arabs, particularly the Iranis, the Hezbollah, and its own population to be fully aware of how vulnerable it is to missile and drone and other attacks. Within 48 hours of Israel's invasion of southern Lebanon, Israel's confirmed casualties ran to over 300. I checked that fact prior to making this video. It is certain that the initially reported numbers were gross understatements. Beirut has been absolutely devastated in parts. No matter where our sympathies lie, these points are pertinent to the conclusion, pertinent to where we stand on the late afternoon of Sunday, the 6th of October, 2024. The renowned Belém actor panel says that Israel is now going to strike the Irani presidential complex, the renowned or notorious Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps HQs across Iran, various Iranian oil facilities, and possibly the supreme leader, that is to say the Ayatollah, the supreme leader's own compound. Russia is actively assisting Lebanon as a country, as opposed to assisting Hezbollah, with all sorts of humanitarian support. Russia is believed to have given numerous S-300, S-400, and perhaps S-500 air defense complexes to Iran. It is well understood by all of the most competent observers that those air defense complexes are infinitely superior to anything that the Israelis or the Americans have. To give you a sense of perspective, South Africa is 1,221,037 square kilometers in size. The Kruger Park is 19,485 square kilometers in size. Israel's land area is 21,671 square kilometers in size, barely 10% bigger than the Kruger Park. Israel's population is almost on the dot 9 million. Therefore, what threatens is a massacre. We cannot say that we know what the future holds, or that we know the mind of our Lord God. But what threatens is an enormous massacre, should this war escalate any further. Because it now seems as if much of the Arab world is fed up. To give you a sense of perspective, of the 10,300 strikes across Israel's northern border in recent years, 8,200 of them have been perpetrated by Israel. What I'm trying to say is that from the Arab perspective, no matter what you or I may believe or think or feel, from the Arab perspective, they are the aggrieved party. In one 24-month period, Israel penetrated Lebanese airspace over 22,000 times, if you can even believe that. Presumably, the USA shall now rapidly move to shut down the Straits of Hormuz. That is to say, the narrowest part of the Persian Gulf, through which it varies from day to day and week to week and month to month, between 20% and 30%. So about, on average, 25% of the world's oil consumption is shipped daily. Not to mention, roughly 40% of the world's natural gas. We may also expect the Red Sea and Suez Canal traffic to come to a grinding halt. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Suidlanders, the week in review for Friday, the 4th of October. But as I say, only recorded in the gorgeous Hofmeyer Victoria Boutique Hotel on the afternoon of Sunday, the 6th of October, due to circumstances beyond our control. But we trust that it has been of value, because we appear to be staring into the abyss of a conflict, the likes of which the world hasn't seen for a long, long, long time. I will end with this piece of advice. I have been speaking to friends in the USA, friends of Suidlanders. And all across the USA, various divisions and brigades and various army various military units are confined to base pending deployment to Israel. That comes on top of over 25% of the US fleet being encamped either in the eastern Mediterranean off the coast of Israel or in the northwestern portion of the Indian Ocean off the coast of the Arabian Peninsula and the Persian Gulf. I think that's enough said for this week. Goodbye, and God bless all of you. And may He grant us all strength and courage for that which lies ahead of us.